Hello everybody and welcome to Insider's Guide. Today, courtesy of our friend Skier72, we're discussing Vancouver's best learning hill, Mount Seymour. Despite its coastal location, Seymour has its own charm that absolutely deserves a visit. We'll dive into exactly why that is and a whole lot more, so let's go ahead and jump into An Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, Mount Seymour. First of all, a huge thank you to Skier72 for preparing this script. Now, before we talk about the mountain itself, let's discuss a bit of background. Mount Seymour is one of Vancouver's 3 local mountains, sitting beside Grouse and Cypress. Each mountain is completely different from one another and likewise attracts completely different clientele. Mount Seymour is best known for their terrain parks, and of the 3 mountains, it generally offers the tamest terrain. The parking situation at Mount Seymour can be extremely bad. If you plan to drive up the mountain on almost any evening or weekends, you will be required to reserve a parking spot on Mount Seymour's website before you drive up. In my experience, the requirements change from season to season, so I would highly recommend checking the website a day or so before you drive up. If you don't want to drive up, Mount Seymour offers a $15 shuttle from the Rupert SkyTrain station in Vancouver. The shuttle also stops at the Parkgate Community Centre in North Vancouver. However, it's usually quite full when it arrives there, so I would recommend taking the shuttle from Rupert Station. If you plan to take the shuttle, arrive early, as long lines at the train station can form, and you can be left waiting if the shuttle fills up completely. At the same time, if you take the shuttle down the mountain during night skiing operations, make sure that you arrive a good bit before the last shuttle is scheduled to leave. Now, let's discuss the mountain itself. Mount Seymour's parking lot is extremely long and thin and basically stretches along a long ridge. Your first and last run of the day will depend on exactly where you're parked. Mount Seymour's day lodge is extremely small and, in my opinion, completely inadequate for the volume of traffic it receives. It is also quite far away from the Mystery Peak lift, so if you're lapping that chair, I'd highly recommend planning in advance when you stop for a break. With that background information out of the way, let's move on to discussing the terrain. The lodge chair was recently upgraded from a double to a quad, and it's essentially Mount Seymour's main beginner lift. That being said, much of the terrain the lodge chair accesses is not that beginner friendly. The main groomer in this pod is Chuck's Place. It's an extremely wide cruiser that starts out a bit steeper on the top before flattening out in the middle. Because of that top part, I'd highly recommend beginner skiers to take a right at the top of the lodge chair and lap rookies instead. Accessing Trapper Joe's to Mistletoe from the lodge chair requires pushing yourself along an extremely flat traverse next to the base lodge. Because these runs require some effort to access, they can be some of the most uncrowded on the mountain. That being said, the entire lodge chair terrain pod is the lowest elevation on the mountain, meaning it often has the worst snow. Unless there's been a recent dump, I would recommend generally avoiding these runs. Trapper John's has the remnants of a former halfpipe on the upper half before mellowing out to a blue cruiser. Seymour 16's is likewise an unremarkable cruiser, usually with poor snow conditions. I much prefer Cabin Trail and Mistletoe when they're open. Mistletoe in particular is almost always completely deserted and has amazing views of the city of Vancouver. The bottoms of these runs have a steeper pitch. Seymour's main magic carpet is completely covered, so it can get quite warm on sunny days, but offers nice protection from the elements otherwise. Overall, the runs here are very well laid out. To exit the terrain pod, cross over to the lodge chair and take it up. If you don't, you'll have to sidestep or walk uphill to the parking lot. The area between the top of the lodge chair and the Mystery Peak Express is completely flat, sometimes a bit uphill. This is, in my opinion, one of Mount Seymour's greatest flaws. Unfortunately, there is not really a good workaround to this. Navigating between the lodge chair and the Mystery Peak Express is never pleasant. Let's now discuss the Mystery Peak lift. This is Seymour's only detachable lift, and it services by far the most terrain. The lines on this lift can get extremely long. Despite this, the resort does a good job of line management, and the singles line always moves fast. By and large, Mount Seymour is known for their terrain parks. The biggest park is TP2. The park's crew is constantly adjusting features and changing elements week by week. TP3 is higher up on the mountain and usually consists of several jumps. It really depends on the snow year how big the jumps get. TP1 is off the magic carpet and has the lowest priority of the 3 parks. From the top of Mystery Peak, the 2 main runs are Manning or Northwoods. Both of these runs are groomed daily. Manning is a bit longer but a bit flatter, especially near the top section. Northwoods has a number of side hits that can vary season to season. True beginners should stick with Manning. Elevator Shaft is also usually groomed. It's a bit steeper than Manning. I would recommend taking Elevator Shaft over the last part of Manning, as it avoids an extremely flat section. Earls is a short run that cuts through the trees, starting out mellow near the top before becoming fairly steep near the bottom. I would recommend avoiding Earls if the snow is not good. Pete's is genuinely one of my favorite runs at Mount Seymour. This run twists and turns through the trees and almost feels like a roller coaster. It's also lit for night skiing. Pete's Glades are some of my favorite glades on the mountain. The glades can be more on the challenging side, but again, how these glades ski completely depends on the snowpack. As the name implies, Velvet Gully cuts through a small gully that feels like a half-pipe in spots. Velvet Gully has numerous side hits, which change quite a bit depending on the snow. I would not recommend accessing it from Manning, as you will have to sidestep up a significant hill. Rather, access Velvet Gully from either Noel's Flight or Nutcracker. Speaking of which, both are moderately steep mogul runs. Often they can be quite scraped off. Friendly Nut House and Looper Express are always ungroomed. Overall, the snow usually isn't the greatest here. Devil's Drop is probably the most technical terrain at Seymour. It passes right under the lift, and while it's short, it can be somewhat technical. Along with many other runs at Seymour, how it skis completely depends on how much snow there is. Mystery Lake is rarely open. However, when it does open, almost nobody makes the effort to ski it, so the snow is usually the best on the mountain. There is a short side step up to access this run. Be warned that Mystery Lake does end on a frozen lake, so you will have to walk out, which usually takes around 3 to 5 minutes. Mystery Glades are some of Seymour's most steep and technical terrain. Depending on the snow, this zone can feature small cliff drops and quite a few other hazards. Uncle Al's Glades are also quite technical, and if you head in the wrong direction, you can get cliffed out. Again, how this area skis varies depending on the snowpack. Gun Barrel is one of my other favorite runs at Seymour. It starts off moderately steep before mellowing out in the middle and then dropping off at the bottom. It does end in the terrain park, so watch out. Tower Line requires a significant side step up and is never worth the effort to ski in my opinion. The same goes for Crowfoot, which is short and flat. Finally, Unicorn is, in my opinion, one of the best runs at Seymour. The upper part is fairly steep before mellowing out. It brings you all the way down to the lodge chair. If you're planning on heading back to the parking lot or the lodge, I would recommend taking Unicorn down to lodge. If you don't want to head down the steep section, you can access Slingshot from Gun Barrel. Unfortunately, because it's such a hassle to reach the Mystery Peak Express from the lodge chair, lapping this run often isn't that enjoyable. Finally, let's discuss the last terrain zone at Mount Seymour, Brockton. Contrary to how the trail map depicts it, Brockton is fairly short, and it doesn't really go that much higher than Mystery Peak. To access Brockton, take back door from the top of Mystery Peak. Scooter is almost never open and requires a side step up. As is the case with the rest of Mount Seymour, how Brockton skis varies drastically depending on the snow accumulation. Stern Stairway is a sustained mogul pitch. You're right on the side of a significant drop-off as you ski this run, and the views are absolutely incredible. Hang 10 is a run which also varies as the snow comes. In the early season, it can be completely scraped up and fairly rocky. Later season, it's a solid run, though I would say the top section is more akin to a black run. The Brockton chair itself goes over a significant cliff that fills up as snow accumulates. I would not recommend cliff drop early season, as that would require mandatory airtime, but later in the season, the cliff can get completely covered. Brockton Gully is the easiest way down and the only groomed trail. If there has been fresh snow, I would highly recommend taking the short hike up Sunshine Ridge. Almost nobody does this, and the snow quality is often the best on the entire mountain. Sammy J and Maverick are also runs that ski more difficult with less snow accumulation. As the snow fills in, so do quite a few of the rocks. Returning from the Brockton chair is extremely annoying. To get out, as you're skiing down Brockton Gully, you'll come upon 3 small branches in the trail. Pick the right branch, then keep an eye out for the Exit 22 sign. Get as much speed as you can. The section of this run leading up to Manning is completely uphill. I would not recommend taking Sammy's Express, as most of this run is completely flat. Due to the nature of the Brockton Chair's exit, I would highly recommend only skiing the Brockton Chair once during the day, so you only have to deal with the exit once. Alright, that's about all you'll want to know before visiting Mount Seymour. Once again, a huge thank you to Skier72 for preparing this script. I'd like to give a shout out to this channel for correctly guessing the mystery run in the early season recap from the 2024-25 season, the first person to correctly guess it despite the video being nearly 2 years old. If you want to be shouted out just like this, keep an eye out for mystery runs in future videos and guess them in the comments. As always, we'd love to hear any questions or comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.